Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Julie Marty Pearson spent nearly 20 years working in higher education. While she had built a successful career, the demands of her work began to take a toll on her health. She was diagnosed with kidney disease and then, 6 months later, experienced the loss of her father. In 2019, she stepped away from her role to undergo surgery. And when the pandemic began shortly thereafter, higher education institutions had shut down, leaving her unexpectedly unemployed. That pause created the space for reflection and ultimately led her to pursue a new professional path, one grounded in purpose, flexibility, and fulfillment.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much for having me.
And may I call you Julie?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So, Dr. Julie Marty Pearson is a dynamic podcaster, speaker, coach, advocate, and passionate storyteller who empowers women to share their stories through podcasting. She is the host of two podcasts, The Story of My Pet. That one really intrigued my interest, which features inspiring pet stories. You're talking to a dog rescuer here. We've rescued over 30 dogs, so you've tweaked my interest, which features inspiring pet stories while advocating for animal rescue, fostering, and adoption. Love it. And Podcast Your Story Now is a show that spotlights women podcasters and guests as they amplify their voices and grow their businesses through podcasting. Julie is also the founder of the Women's Podcaster Party Networking Community, created to support and connect women and podcasters, guests, and speakers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So great to have you here. I know that you have a lot to share, and what we would like to do first is tell us your story.
Wow. Well, I feel like it's already been highlighted.
I know.
As Carol said, I used to work in higher ed. I was in that world most of my adult life. It started when I left my first doctoral program and came home. So I originally started a clinical psychology doctoral program way back in 2001. But about 2 or 3 weeks after I moved away from home for the first time, had my own apartment for the first time in a new city, 9/11 happened. Definitely made it much more difficult to kind of dive in. And I also know now I was a little burnt out. I had done undergrad into a master's, then into the doctoral program. And I think my body was just like, okay, we're tired.
Okay.
So I left that program after a year, and when I went home, but during that time that I was in that program, I had started teaching part-time at a community college where I lived, and I always loved education. I always loved just the whole experience, and I was a TA, I was a research assistant, all the things when I was in college.
Mhm.
So teaching part-time was natural. So when I came back to my hometown and got a full-time job, I started teaching part-time in the local community colleges there as well. And then pretty soon within that first year, I actually got a full-time job at the school I went to, Cal State University, Bakersfield. And so I had a staff position there, and I had that for many years, and that evolved. So it was really me doing different things, but I just loved education. I loved teaching. I loved being a part of it. So when I went back to a different doctoral program, it was one for people working. So it was on the weekends so that we could work and do school. And my dissertation was on education, was on the job I was doing at the time. So it was very ingrained in who I was. I always loved being a student, loved being a teacher. So, it was one of those things where I just assumed my whole world that would be it forever. But the hard part with higher ed is to move up, you have to move schools. So it was a lot
Oh,
of,
really?
yeah, I mean, it's very, some people do move up within the same, but for a lot of us, especially as we, grow and get into different types of positions, you kind of have to, because there's only so many options at each school you're at.
Okay.
So my husband stayed here in Bakersfield, where both of us were born, and as our home base, and then I commuted to jobs all over California. And so in 2017, I turned 40, and 2 weeks later, I was diagnosed with kidney disease. And I'd always dealt with autoimmune issues, so I always had to balance that. But I was literally wearing my body out between commuting and traveling for the job and the stress of the jobs. Working in accreditation can be very stressful. My body was just worn out. I already knew something was different. I thought it was just a flare of my autoimmune stuff. I've dealt with chronic fatigue issues a lot, but it was different. And my kidney function had gone all the way down to 26%. And so when that happens, your kidneys are very important. They do a lot. And, when they saw it on a test, and I was talking to a friend who had worked in dialysis, she was like, oh my God, how are you even upright and functioning? Because she knew what that meant. And I'm like, well, I'm pushing through like I've always had to, right? And so I actually took some time off, and I had to go through a lot of testing, and we had to adjust a lot of meds and stuff. And I am better now, but I still have chronic kidney disease. I'm in the 45 to 50% function, so I'm better, but I was never able to get it up higher than that. So it's something I have to manage. And so at that point, I knew I couldn't keep doing what I had been doing in terms of commuting and living away from home and living out of a suitcase and having stressful jobs. So then, when my dad passed away, a few months later, it was really like, oh, I had to take more time off. And so there was stuff I already knew I was going to have to figure out, but then the kidney disease and him passing and and my husband lost his job. There was just a lot. And 2018 was a really hard year for us. But it was kind of the beginning of, okay, what is going to be the answer? And so I tried finding jobs closer to home, and I did find one, but I still it wasn't right. Like, it's not your people. It's not the right place for you. So when I was off work, when COVID hit, it really gave me the space to kind of stop and really think about it, like so many of us. But, even at the time, it was like, well, I couldn't even go back to that world if I wanted to right now because all the schools are closed. So I can't get a job in what I used to do. So
Do you recall how long the schools were closed? I don't recall, but it was a while, wasn't it?
It was a while. Yeah. My husband, he's a carpenter, but he works for a school district. So he was actually considered, not first responder, but essential worker. So he was only off for 2 weeks. So he worked the entire rest of the time because they had to be at the schools to maintain them.
Right.
And then of course he was very busy when they were getting ready to come back because he was the guy who was putting up all the screens and all the stuff. So for us it was a little different because he was gone most of it, but they were out. They were out for months, though, at least.
Oh my goodness, I didn't recall that. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of our schools here in California were on distance education for a long time. So even with that, schools weren't in a hiring mode because they were just surviving. And so, the doctorate I have, we took a whole class on how to be a coach, how to coach like executives or people in organizations and leadership. So coaching, because I had also at one point wanted to be a therapist, was something I had always wanted to do. So that was the natural kind of first step for me, was, really starting a coaching business. And so that's kind of what I did. End of 2020 into 2021, I was doing career coaching. So mainly helping women with finding new jobs or helping them figure out if they wanted to pivot or try something new,
Hmm.
things like that. So that was an easy transition for me. But I'll be honest, I wasn't passionate about it. Like, it wasn't exciting. So at the same time, I was taking lots of classes, just like how to run a business, how to do different marketing. And that's when I took a class on podcasting, which of course had become even more so popular
Of
during the
course.
pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
And so I went through that process and really loved learning, but I never seemed to get it off the ground, because it was like, well, my business is this, so this is what it should be about. But like I said, I wasn't passionate about it. So it wasn't really exciting for me to do it. So I decided to just kind of put that aside and do it for fun and see if I even liked it. And like, what is something I could talk about with no prep any day is
Mhm.
animals.
Oh, I see. That's where that came from. Okay.
Yeah. So the
So tell us
story of
about
my
that. Yeah.
yeah, the story of my pet was my first podcast. I started it back. I started it in 2021, officially 2022, and I've always been a huge animal lover. Grew up loving animals with pets. They've always been an important part of my life. I'm a proud fur mom, and it was just kind of for fun to see what this podcasting thing was and if
Hmm.
I liked it. And then as I started putting out episodes and started having people listen, then people started reaching out, asking to be on it. And even though I started it like for fun and kind of light, I quickly realized there was a lot of story behind the rescue part of it. And I started interviewing people who were working in rescue or volunteering. Then I had someone from my local shelter come on. And I realized that even though I'd always been an animal advocate and knew certain things, I really didn't know the breadth of what happens in the world of
Interesting.
rescue and how shelters work. So the story of my pet has become a platform for me to help advocate and educate. And really, I ask every guest who comes on to have at least one rescue or animal nonprofit to share, because I know how hard it is for a lot of the small organizations. And so one of my, points with that podcast is to help those organizations get some visibility and get some growth.
Awesome. That's
And so
awesome.
now that's really my focus. I really only take guests who have some aspect of either volunteering or working or experience in rescue, because I see how important it is for people to learn and understand what's really going on. And here in the US, we have a massive overpopulation crisis, and it's really heartbreaking. I've volunteered, I've fostered kittens since then. I worked part-time in one of my shelters for a little while as well, and that really opened my eyes to the reality of what
Mm.
goes on and what the people who work day in and day out trying to save the animals get put through, and that they get so much of the
Oh,
blame when it
wow.
isn't.
Wow.
So I really love that, and it's my passion project. Sometimes it gets a pause when I have other things that take priority, but after 4 years, the podcast is a top 5% podcast, and it continues to grow even when I'm not putting out new episodes. So it's something I'm very proud of and hope I'll be able to keep going for many more years.
Can you tell us one story that sticks out to you?
Well, one of the episodes I haven't released yet, it was someone that I met through Podmatch, actually, like we did. And at first, when we met, he was like, I don't really think I'm the right guest, blah, blah, blah. But then we just started talking, and he had written an autobiography about the work he did in elections back in 2020, very stressful stuff, and how he really struggled with mental health. And he even considered suicide, but that it was his cats that saved him, because he
Oh my
knew that he
goodness.
had to keep going for them, and they were the reason he couldn't leave, because they relied on him and he loved them. And so that has been one of the stories where
Mm.
it's like pets really do save our lives. It's not just about us rescuing
Right.
them.
Right.
And so that's something I really take pride in, allowing people to share those stories. And we do talk sometimes about pet loss and grief, and anticipatory grief, which I've been going through myself. And it's really important, I think, for people to hear those stories and realize it's like, yeah, it's okay. If you lose a pet, that's a family member. It's okay to
Right,
grieve,
exactly.
like to give, because sometimes, you hear people, oh, it's just an animal. Oh, it's not a big
Exactly. Yep.
deal. But we know it is. And so if I can help anyone feel less alone or understood, or just hear like, yeah, your pets are your family, it's absolutely okay to feel that way because that's what they are. So I take a lot of pride in that. And I also really appreciate people who allow me to help them share those stories because they can be difficult, but it really is important to share them. And so that's definitely been a one of the powerful things for me is really seeing people share these deep, important stories that other people need to hear.
I love it. I absolutely love it. As I mentioned, we've rescued so many and we continue to rescue as many as we can. I'm sure you probably have talked to people who have done just that, correct?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of
Yeah.
people I've talked to, it's their whole life,
Yes. Yeah.
that whether they work in it or volunteer. I've met, the other thing I've quickly learned with not just the pet podcast, but just podcasting is how many incredible women there are out there doing these amazing things. I mean, I've met women who've started nonprofits, rescues, all sorts of businesses, and they all, really have a passion to utilize what they're doing to help others, whether it's other people or other pets. And so that kind of inspires me to keep going because I just think it's important for us to share those stories.
Absolutely. My hat is definitely off to you. Thank you. We're going to take a quick, about a 10-second break. And when we come back, we want you to talk about the importance of storytelling. I know that's a completely different subject, but I'm anxious to hear about that and your networking community, your coaching business, etc. We'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Well, this has been certainly inspiring to hear you share not only your life story, but also regarding your rescue of animals. I love it, and I thank you for sharing that. Now, tell us the importance of storytelling for promoting your business or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
intrigued.
Yeah, so I think, doing the pet podcast, I really learned a lot about storytelling and I had been playing around with different ideas. And it was after going to Podfest in 2024 when I decided to leave career coaching aside and go full into podcasting. And what I found as a guest, as I was guesting more myself, was how do I share pieces of my life, parts of my experience as a guest in interviews? And I really realized it was the storytelling. Kind of what I've done is tell
Mm,
you the
hmm.
highlights of how things happen and how it impacted me. But then I also realized that women don't always know how to do that. And as
Good
I
point.
started I started speaking, and I think it's easy sometimes for us as women to talk about other people or talk about examples, but not necessarily about ourselves or our own personal story. So, as I became better at that and worked on that as myself, I thought, okay, so women kind of need support in this. And so that is what made me shift fully into podcasting with my business was realizing women needed support in not only how to do it, but how to figure out what part of their story was important or could be shared. So for me, a lot of it is like finding those moments in life where a major change happened or you had to make a big decision. And how does that impact in terms of sharing your story, whatever you do, whether it's your business or something else. And so that's really where storytelling became important to me, but also helping other women do it. And I also found that, as women, we talk about things differently than men. We talk about different things than men often. And so my networking community kind of came out of, I wasn't really seeing a lot of spaces just for women in podcasting. I mean, even in the categories, you can't select podcasts for women.
Right.
Right. So I decided, as a part of kind of starting my business in this area and figuring out what people really needed in terms of support, was doing networking events. So I created the Women's Podcaster Party, which I think is just fun, a fun name. And I've been doing that for 2 years, offering a space for women, and really it's open to anyone, but I say women because those are the people I'm supporting. And I want it to be a safe space that anybody, whether they are in podcasting or want to get into it or have no idea what it is and how it could help them, just a place for them to come and meet people and ask questions maybe they don't feel as comfortable asking in bigger communities or in co-ed spaces. Just a place for them to learn and feel like it's okay to not know what you don't know, and to ask all the questions and figure out how podcasting might help you, help them and their business.
What a great idea. So this is essentially what you focus on.
So my coaching business focuses on helping people launch podcasts. So I do that one-on-one and in group programs. But the networking kind of evolved into a membership. So I have a membership where anyone can join, and I do monthly group coaching, strategy sessions, deep dive workshops. So I still do offer the networking events for free, although those, it's a lot of work to promote and host and do those every month. So probably won't be doing that as much. I want to, focus more on the membership that I've grown. But I always want to have a space where women can come in and learn, even if it's, come into the membership for a month and see what it's like or whatever it may be. But I also love connecting people. I love meeting someone and going, oh, I know a great guest for your show, or, oh, I know a great podcaster who would love to have you as a guest. So part of that is just me. I love community building and connecting people. So that's something I found to be very important to me, not only as a podcaster, but as a business owner. And so I definitely want to continue that process. It may shift a little just because every month is a lot of work, but I've gotten a lot of great feedback. I also bring in people I know in podcasting to come into the community and share their story, share their expertise, help people learn different aspects of podcasting they may not know, because podcasting is always changing too. So I try to stay up on that, but I also love bringing in people I know who are experts to come in and share with my community so that we can all continue to learn and grow as well.
Excellent. Now, do you offer both one-on-one and group coaching?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that and how somebody might be able to contact you, or
So you can find all of my services and events and everything on my website, juliemartypearson.com. And I do what I call a podcast launch accelerator. I have a couple different options. Some people want group and, just some accountability and training. And so I do that where I basically teach people how to launch, how to do all the things so they can keep doing it themselves, set up the right process and structure. Some people want it different. I have done some one-on-one with people who have launched so that they can meet whenever they need to and go as fast or as slow as they want to. We all have limited time. But I also have done for you. Some people just want to show up and record and let me handle the rest of it. So I really have options depending on what's right for you, but I will say I also don't just jump right to launch podcasts. I like to meet people and get to know them and their business.
Great.
And figure out what's right for them, because not everybody needs a podcast, but podcasting is something you should be tapping into, even if it's as a guest or a sponsor or some type of collaboration. And so I really take that role as I call myself a podcasting mentor, is I want people to do what's right for them and their business. I don't just automatically try to push people. I'm not a podcast pusher. Not everyone need one, but there are so many different ways you can tap into it to really help grow your business that it's important, especially for women, to be utilizing it. And also, we just need more women in podcasting.
And do you have a website where people can go and decide what is best for them?
Yes. Like I said, my website is
Right.
juliemartypearson.com,
Okay.
and you'll find my podcast, my services, all my upcoming events there on that website.
This has been great. I had no idea that somebody like you was out there.
Oh,
No, I'm
love that.
serious. I mean, you're covering it all,
Yeah,
you know.
I really, I get. The other side of it is I still get to be a teacher. I really love like getting on
Yes.
Zoom and helping people break it down. And I used to teach statistics, so I'm used to people being scared and not understanding
Okay.
something. And I really like people to get less afraid of this whole idea of podcasting and the tech and how to edit and all of that. And some people don't want to learn it, and that is totally fine. But I'd rather give people the tools so they can do it themselves, or if they have a VA or something, because I want them to succeed. I don't want them to like get set up to fail. So that's really important to me.
Julie, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience, either about your own story or how you can help them?
Yeah, I would say, which is kind of my own story, but also like if you felt this like nagging pull to do
Yes,
something, like
okay.
something you want to share, there's something you think that might help other people if they hear it. I've learned so much myself about my own health and different things
Right.
I've gone through in my life that like if I share it, somebody may feel less alone. Somebody else
That's
out
right.
there
That's right.
is going through it. And if podcasting seems scary to you, it's okay. If it's new to you, it is scary. It's overwhelming. But the best way to start is to find a podcast to guest on, to see what that feels like, to see what it feels like to be interviewed, to start to share your story. And I think guesting is a really great way to one, see if you even like podcasting, because you don't want to invest time and money in something you don't even enjoy
Right.
doing. But also, I've found it to be a very healing process in sharing different aspects of my story. I really find like, okay, I'm using this for good now. I can, it's helped me think about things I hadn't thought about. Them like, wow, that may be still bothering me. So if you feel a pull to share something, do it. There's a reason. Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs you to share it. So just try it. And if you're not even sure where to start as a guest, reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
You are an encourager, and I love that about you. And I thank you because I think you've just given those who are listening that little extra push that they may have needed. And audience, I hope that you will contact Julie and go to her website, juliemartypearson.com, and see what she has to offer. I'm glad I did. So thank you, Julie, again for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.